Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everybody, to the first of the pre-conference webinars for this year's DMUC. This is Daryl Osterhout at SDWIS. Glad to have everybody on board. We're trying to focus a number of the pre-conference webinars this year on sort of bringing everybody up to speed on all of the issues surrounding drinking water data management and SDWIS and other things, not just PRIME, but making sure that the background is there so we can talk about the future constructively when we get on site in Salt Lake City next month. So this will be good information, I think, for those coming to the meeting, but even for those that aren't coming to the meeting that want to learn a little more about some of the basics and some of the background. And just a reminder that we have another webinar tomorrow and one on the 28th, a week from Thursday. So hopefully you're signed up for those. If you're not, look at SDWIS website in the events tab and you will find information on registering for the future webinars. As we go through the webinar today, if you have questions, type those into the question box and we'll stop periodically during the presentations to answer questions. We won't have any live phone answering and questioning, but we will do it all through the question box on the tab on your screen. So please feel free to plug the questions in at any time. We'll get to as many of those as we can today. And also we will be recording this webinar so that if there are folks in your office that weren't able to be with us today and want to look at this, or you want to look back at something that you heard here before you come to Salt Lake City next month, it will be available probably sometime next week. With that, I'm going to turn this over to our speakers. We're happy to have three people from EPA that are going to share various parts of SDWIS with us.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Daryl. My name is Trang Lee, and then I'm go first with the section, some basic information about the SDWIS background, SDWIS state, a little bit about FedRAP, and then my colleague Renee will continue to walk you through the file submissions and the new production control process. And then Alex, another colleague from my team, our team, also walk you through all the tools that we have today. So talking about the basic information about SDWIS, we cover the first section. We want to give you the context of what is the bottom line for SDWIS, why we have reporting, and then we walk you through the two subsystems of the SDWIS, which is SDWIS state and SDWIS Fed. So the goal of this section is kind of refresh the current knowledge that we have about a SDWIS operation, especially we just have the new federal reporting process and with the new production control. So hopefully that somehow that's useful. So talking about the background of SDWIS, basically SDWIS, this is an EPA system support for the Safe Drinking Water Act implementations, and then the Public Water System Supervision Program. So the program has been delegated to primacy agency, state, tribe, or U.S. territory, region, and where the state or tribe haven't taken the primacy, we have SDWIS, we have EPA regional direct implementations as managed drinking water program. So so the data set, the data collection for SDWIS, we have some basic inventory of the water system we collect the name of water system, the identifications, number for the water system, the public water system we usually call a PWS. So we have the PWS ID, we collect the what kind of city or county the PWS there, what the number of people served, or what type of a system, or the system is the year-round operation or seasonal, different characteristics of the water source, and as well as we collect the lat long of the water source. We also collect the data for compliant to the drinking water regulation. So we want to make sure the violations, make sure the compliance of the monitoring and reporting schedule, or the treatment technique. We want to make sure all the maximum contaminant level have to be followed, as well as to communicate all the information, the quality of the water to the public. So regarding the enforcement actions, we if the violations water system, we want to make sure take the action to get the water system returned to compliance. So in addition to the compliant enforcement, we also collect the data for sampling result data to check on the contaminants in the water, and we want to monitor the water result when it go above the maximum contaminant level. So those are the basis data collection for SDWIS. So SDWIS have been delegated to multiple primacy agencies. So in nationwide, we have total of 67 primacy agencies, and for the state, have 51 programs there, and 49 programs with community water system, and 2 programs for non-community water system. For the territories, we have 5 programs. And also for tribe, we have 1 program, is Navajo Nation, and the rest of the regions is handled mostly the tribal program, but special for Region 3 and Region A. Region 3, we have DC, no tribe, and Region A, we have tribe, and in addition to that, we have Wyoming. So these are the primacy agency manage the drinking water program for entire nation. So regarding the stakeholder for SDWIS, we have basically 4 group of entities here as involved into the SDWIS. Primacy agency, those primacy agency which you see from the previous slide is one of the entity. And then obviously the public water system owner or operators also another stakeholder. Also we have EPA as the EPA regions as also that, and also for the headquarters we have Office of Water, as well as the Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance. We usually call it OECA. And finally, the public also interest in the information on the drinking water as well. So this is the very high level concept of how the SDWIS reporting data flow. So we have 2 bases, data flow, sub-data flow. First thing is the data is come from the reporting from the water system owner or operator as reported to the primacy agency, and that's the primacy agency. Obviously, it could be using either the SDWIS state user or could be the SDWIS state free. So the first data flow there is we call the subsystem. Number one is SDWIS state data flow, and then for the second data flow is get the data from primacy agency reporting to EPA. So that is the we call the SDWIS fed data flow. It's very much a 67 primacy agency is currently report to EPA quarterly. So overall, the data has come from owner operator to get to the primacy agency and get to the EPA, and that's a very high level concept. But here, what is the subsystem? Is some of the basic information on the subsystem. SDWIS state just one version of the big SDWIS that is used by the primacy agency to handle the primacy drinking water program. And obviously, it just contains the data from the public water system to primacy agency. So that's one flow that we kind of explain the diagram that we just see previously. And then also the SDWIS fed, as we all know, this is the federal version of the SDWIS, and also is collect the data for entire nation. So this is a national data system and used mostly by EPA to oversee and manage the national drinking water program and make sure that all the compliance of the regulations, and we want to make sure the safe drinking water, protect the public health from that. The data contains for drinking water SDWIS fed is just a report from primacy agency to EPA. So it's just order from the regulator. It's not directly from the public water system owner operator. So the two subsystems, it will help to get entire data and make sure that we can protect well with public health. So here the map to tell how many SDWIS stay using from the whole nation. So here the map have been for a while. It could be changed for the versions, but basically currently we have 67 reporting primacy agency and 53 using SDWIS state, and then 14 is a non-SDWIS state. 14 program at non-SDWIS state. So it lists out state by state with the versions. Could be update something is maybe a little bit different from the versions, but basically these are to tell who is the SDWIS state user, who is the SDWIS state free. So so also this for this slide is basically we just kind of say that what kind of reporting requirements and why I have to report into EPA. So it's basically we just implement the SDWIS and then to make sure that we have some standard and to check on the contaminants in the drinking water. So we follow the national primary drinking water regulations to get checking the data and monitoring to make sure the data is good and safe. The primacy agency, this is reporting from primacy agency to EPA. So we have 4 quarter reporting for annually. So the quarter is stuck with April with quarter 1, and then July at quarter 2, October, and January quarter 3 and 4. And you see annual performance measure report in October. So that is kind of overview as a background of the SDWIS. Now we go into one of the subsystems in SDWIS, which is a SDWIS state, the version of primacy agency using. So SDWIS state, what is the data collect for SDWIS state? As basically the SDWIS state is collect more data than the EPA require, because the primacy agency may have more regulation on drinking water, but here is the information that that allow the data collection on SDWIS state. You can see the engineering information, the sampling result, monitoring schedule to determine for the compliance of the rule, and track the site visit or collect the sanitary surveys or all the activity related to the primacy. So so that's a very high level to say about the SDWIS state data collection. So here the component of SDWIS state. So SDWIS state have multiple applications underneath of it. So the SDWIS state itself is the database. It's a core application to store all the information reported from the PWS owner-operator. In addition to the core applications, we do have the SDWIS FedRAP. As this application just allows SDWIS state user to be able to extract the data out from SDWIS state and report required data to EPA. Also, we have another applications called Lab to State. This tool is allow the user to get the data into the XML format. It could get from the electronic drinking water report, or we call EDWR, data exchange template, or it could get from the CSV file to generate into the XML file. So that XML file is not ready for get into the XML sampling that can be converted and loaded into the SDWIS state database. So that's XML sampling. It just read and load the data into SDWIS state database. So just for heads up here is that Lab to State is now replaced as CMDP. So CMDP is now is newer, more modernized versions of Lab to State in some way. XML sampling is still using currently together with the data synchronization engine as one of a component on CMDP data flow. As together with the DSC, it can transfer the data from moving the data from the main CMDP to the SDWIS state database. So also we have another application in SDWIS state suite. It's the data bridge. Is basically this application it helps to generate the XML sampling file and method ready for migration to state. So the XML file generated from data bridge as will be used migration to state application to get the data loaded into SDWIS state database. So migration to state will take the XML generated from data bridge to load the data into SDWIS state database. And then also the Drinking Water Watch is an application is quite popular with a lot of users using to display the SDWIS data on the web so public can see it. So here is the picture of one of the primacy agency is using the Drinking Water Watch. So those are the components of SDWIS Day. So now we go into the first application, the core application for SDWIS Day. It's the database. And currently, we know that it's on the version 3.33. And this is the database installed at the primacy agency location. So very much primacy agency operates and maintain the system itself to get the data for their own use. And the versions of SDWIS Day, it have two type of the platform, Oracle or SQL Server. It could be used with Windows or Linux, as well as to use the Java versions to park up the process to get the setup for the SDWIS Day. They would use Java, and also many primacy agencies have been using the SDWIS Day through the ODBC, the Open Database Connectivity, so to make a connection to multiple other reporting applications that the primacy agency needs. So that's basically a SDWIS Day. Maybe I should stop here to see if there is any questions about that.
Yeah, Trang, we have one question entered by Stephen Burke. Can you please confirm that lab to state is Chromera compliant?
Yes, it is. It is lab to state is to get the data from CSV or is from the EDWR. Is get the data directly to reporting from the water system owner or the lab. So it needs to get followed through the Chromera process. So the answer is yes.
Great, thank you. That's all
yeah.
the questions we have right now.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then I'm going to kind of briefly go to the SDWIS federal versions. That's another subsystem of the SDWIS. First things that this is the entire SDWIS Fed data flow. So as you can see, we get the data from primacy agency, basically get from either SDWIS state user or non-SDWIS state user. So both are using the FedRAP and convert the data into the XML file and submit it into CDX. So obviously the FedRAP helping for doing the validation, generate into the XML file. And when the file is ready, get uploaded or forward to the CDX. And when it passes through the CDX, it goes to the production control process, which you will hear later from Renee will explain for you the process there to get through the generate, look at the file and see if it's valid, is that ready to for the reporting. So it will process out the result of validation. You will generate the error reports as well as to give the summary of the data submissions. So those information that give you the feedback from the primacy agency data file, and then follow that. You can adjust the file to make sure it's conform or the format and the structure and the rules, and then get a file. Everything is good. The file will go to the loaded into the ODS, and quarterly we have the process of to move the data from the ODS to get into the data warehouse, and from the data warehouse, the data can be used multiple ways. First, for the OW, the data generates all the standard reports or different application that you will hear later from Alex to get you more detail on the reporting services, what kind of tool that we use here, as well as to the data we'll get into the OEGA for the compliance report. So this is the entire SDWIS Fed data flow for the data get from primacy agency to EPA. And then here the component. So SDWIS Fed component is have, we look at from the data flow in and the data flow out. So we make sure the data flow in is the quality and the complete. So we have three applications to help for the data flow in. Obviously, the FedRAP is the application that the primacy agency always use to submit the data and check whether the data is have the is valid or is have any error or so. So FedRAP currently in the version of 3.51. So FedRAP help to for those who use SDWIS State, FedRAP help to generate into the XML document. And currently, the XML schema for the current versions is 3.6. So the XML document is generated for three different groups of the data collection for SDWIS Fed as the inventory, the action file, and then a sample file. So all these two applications help to move the data into the store and store the data into the operational data store, and we usually call the ODS. So this ODS is kind of database store all the raw data submission from primacy agency. So that's the data flow in that we have for the SDWIS Fed. So what is the data flow out? Basically, we have two components, two applications for the data flow out. First thing, the data warehouse is store all the data of record. This is the data of the final thing that we use for all reports. So obviously, get the data from ODS to data warehouse. We'll have some process there. Some of the things like derived data, we will have additional information, like mostly derived data from other data field from the ODS. So that data will be used for the final, and the reporting services is get all the data from the data warehouse to generate all the applications that can be used for drinking water program. And here's one of the just kind of some information regarding the FedRAP. The FedRAP is primacy agency used to prepare the reporting quality report to EPA. For those who use the SDWIS State, this is a feature that's automatically extract the data from SDWIS State to and put it and go to into the SDWIS 3.6 XML file. So for those who not use SDWIS State, obviously FedRAP help to get validate the data and make sure the data conform with the federally requirements. And FedRAP is just provide all the validation report or detects any data as inconsistency with the XML format and report. So the primacy agency can follow the validation report and correct the error. So FedRAP, as the requirement for FedRAP is have not only just the format, but also incorporate the business rule, the drinking water rule requirement to make sure the data is in appropriate format and meet all the reported needed. And we know that FedRAP it have three different domains: inventory, actions, and sample. And FedRAP is just the application there here as installed at the primacy agency environment, and also as embedded into the production control process at EPA environment, which we usually call the National Computer Center, NCC, as for checking the data and ensure the data is good before it can go to further into the reporting process. So with that, I'd like to see any questions there first before I transfer to my colleague, which is Renee Morris. Is there any questions, Alex?
No question online right now.
All right. Thank you. So right now, the file submission step is Renee will come in to explain further detail that how the data get into submissions and get processed from the EPA environment. So Renee.
Hello, everyone. This is Renee Morris. I'm going to take over the presentation for a little while. File submissions. Sorry, let me get this as a slideshow. Uh-oh, start at the beginning. I'll zip through. Okay, here we are. So file submissions, it's the same as we've always done. We do have a new system where you can submit your files, but preparation of the files always been the same. You prepare the XML file, either with your non-SDWIS states, you prepare the XML file, or you use, for SDWIS state, use FedRAP. And for both, you certify the validated XML file using FedRAP, and then you submit it. So we have a new tool for submitting. It's pretty similar to the past, but there's lots of new exciting things added to it. First thing I want to say is if you do want access to CDX, you need to contact me. I put in place a new system where I have more control. In the past, CDX was difficult to have you get multiple states and the regions. It was hard for them to get different authority to do different things. So I've split it up. I've taken back some of the control from CDX help desk, and now you need to go through me. And in the future, it'll be Tawana Dorsey as well. She'll be able to give you access. But you can't contact CDX help and have them give you access. It won't work. So let me go show you user management, the region sees. These are all, this is a screenshot of region 1. So the regions can see what you have access to. They can also contact me and have me add access for you guys. One of the things they do have is whether you want to receive processing notifications. So if you want to know your file has been processed, please let your region know, and all they have to do is check this box and you'll get an email when the file you submitted has been processed. That's a new thing we've implemented, and since the last time I've shown this, so it's kind of neat. If you're interested and want to make sure the region processes your file, let them know and they can check that box and let you get the email. Other than that, I will start with file upload. So there's two ways to submit a file. You can go to this CDX application, or you can still use the node that you had in the past. So I know, like Barrett Brown, he submits using a node, and we actually had him test. Thank you, Barrett. He tested to make sure the node still worked. But the cool thing is now his file comes up on here, and he can see more information about his file, just like everyone else. So that's kind of neat. And the regions, now do all the processing. It used to be the headquarters would process your file once it was submitted after the region approved it. Now the region approves it and they actually process the file as well. So it takes a lot of control out of headquarters and gives it to the regions. So if you have any trouble with your files, please talk to your regions. And we also added a bunch of notifications. A lot of the notifications in the past went to your CDX inbox. We've taken that out. That didn't always work. We didn't always get the notifications, or they'd come many days later. So we now are sending them to your email that's part of your CDX login. So please check on that. That's another thing you can see. I'll go back to the regional user management. The region can tell you what emails listed if you don't know. You can also get information about yourself when you're logged into CDX. Up in the right-hand corner, you see your user ID for CDX, and it'll give you information about your profile. So this is me. I'm headquarters administrator, and that's the email I use. So you can do the same when you're logged into CDX, no matter where you're logged in, even on the file upload. That box on the right with your user ID is always there. If you ever need to get back to your CDX, you can click My CDX, and I actually probably should have showed you log in, how you log in and everything, but it's the same as it was in the past. We just have new roles, and only those roles, new roles for the system are active. So if you're a primacy agency, you're going to usually either use primacy agency request or submitter, and then we have a number of roles for regional people. And then I'm going to log in as headquarters because then I can see all the roles, which is kind of fun. So I'll go back to file upload, and I want to say thank you, Alex, for checking the questions for us. I can't do two things at once. I have trouble doing one thing at once. So I appreciate you doing that, and feel free to submit questions as we go. I'll have Alex jump in with any questions. Just sometimes it's easier while the screen's open to ask the questions. So if you have any, throw them up there, and Alex, feel free to interrupt me as they come in, or if any come in. So file uploads. The cool thing is you can see what's been submitted for the quarter. So this is the latest quarter. It's going to be, so July will be 2018 Q2, and these are the files that have been submitted so far for that quarter. So it's kind of nice. I can see who's coming in and what files they're doing. And you, as a state, so if I logged in as Illinois, I could see what files have been submitted for my state. Since I logged in as the headquarters, I see everyone's. So up to upload a file, it's very similar to the past. Upload a file, you choose a file. Again, it's going to be the XML file that got created from FedRep or validated through FedRep. It is a zip file. Please make sure you submit only a zip file. We did have an issue where somebody was trying to submit the XML. It will fail, and we did add an error message, so it has to be a zip file. You choose the file. I won't go through all this because I'll end up messing up the system and adding files I shouldn't. So, but it's pretty straightforward. And in the presentation, I do have a slide showing the uploading file and everything, so you can see how to do it in case you forget. And since this is pretty quick, I'm going through everything. The other thing I wanted to show you is once you upload a file, it says you can see what's the status. So job status was that file was valid. So I'm looking at an Illinois file for samples right now. It was a valid file. Regional approval, it hasn't been approved yet, so it's pending. If it is approved, you'll see regional approver status will say approved, and if it's been processed, it'll say completed. So these ones that say completed, they were approved and processed. If it says valid, it means the file is valid, but pending means it hasn't been approved. And this approved with a job status of valid means it's been approved, it just hasn't been processed. So you can get all kinds of information about what's going on with your file and know what's happening.
Renee, we've got one question online.
Sure.
It is, are the quarters represented as federal quarters or calendar quarters?
So it's the quarters we normally use for all our reporting services. So quarter 2 is the July timeframe. So remember, you always have 90 days delay on your reporting. So the July timeframe includes data up through March 31st. So it's always a 90-day or up to a 90-day delay.
Great, thank you.
So when when you're looking at the files, you can also find out what's going on with it. So the sample one is pending, so it hasn't been approved. I can go and look at it and see the FedRep report and see what happened. Did it had some rejects? You can go through and find out what was going on with that. I will return to one that has been processed, and you'll see it includes even more information. So once it's been, so when it gets submitted, you can always get to the zip file. When it's been submitted, it also has the FedRep report. Once it's been processed, you'll also be able to get to the processing summary. You can look at the processing summary and see what happened, what was accepted, rejected, any issues, things like that. And you also can see, get an XML. Since it's a sample file, I should have opened something more interesting. Let me open an actions file. Oops, wrong one, sorry. One more time. Let me do an actions that's been completed. It's got a lot more information about it. It's a lot more interesting. There's things that happen with it. You can see the errors. You can actually look at these errors online. It's just like our reporting services. You get the same kind of filters, formatting, and download. So you can download information. You can click on these and actually see the details. So these are all the errors for enforcement action errors, and see what systems and what the errors were associated with them. And that goes same for each one of these. You can actually go and see the detail. Again, I'm sorry, I should have shown you when you're in the breakout, when it goes to the detail, again, you have the same control. You can download the information. If it would work. It's still pulling up the data. There we go. You can select columns. You can actually download the data again as an Excel if that's what you want to do. You can look on it online, all kinds of things. You also have the option to download the zip file of the ODS report. So you can actually play with it that way, or you can download each of the XML files. As the FedRep report, you can also do the same kind of thing. You can actually look at the different errors and pull out. You cannot look at state errors because the states should actually have that information, but you can look at any federal. So the state errors actually came from the state included in the validated XML file from FedRep. So we actually can't see the detail, but the state should have that. If there was any federal data quality checks or errors, we could see the state or federal ones. So you can also, you can pull down each one of these. There's zip files. You can get the original zip file. So if you're a region, you want to get access to the zip file itself, you can get it there. And then all these different other kind of files. So you can get the XML. This zip file at the bottom here, that includes all the XML files above. So that is submitting a file. Does anyone were there any questions, Alex, why I switch to the next screen?
No additional questions.
Cool. So the other thing you can do as a primacy agency or a region is you can request a file. So I'm going to show you the file history so you can see what's been submitted, and I can say, oh, I want to see what Texas did with their inventory. So I'm going to do a request a file. Now this is a download of ODS. ODS is the operational data store. This is where all the data goes that is submitted by a region or a primacy agency. So it goes into one database. That database is constantly updated throughout the quarter and then gets frozen. And at the end of that quarter, when it's frozen, we take that data, and that's what's used to update the data warehouse. So, and once the data warehouse is updated and we're all set, we unfreeze the ODS, and again, you continue to submit. So we try not to delete anything out of ODS unless there's some inconsistency between the state's system and the Fed system. For example, a really old facility that no longer appears in a state system and therefore can't be deleted out of the Fed system without us doing it on the Fed side. So things like that. But if there's a violation, an update that's greater than the reporting period, you can submit old files with old data sets. And unfortunately, you have to submit several to get up to date, but you can correct old data that way. So if you need to update a violation that would be outside of the 3-year period, you can submit that. You just change your time period for FedRep, but then you have to submit additional ones to get up to the current time. So there are ways of updating the ODS data even if it's old, but it does take a little work. And if you have any questions about that, SCIC is still our support, and they can help you with anything like that, fixing some data, so that we do want the data warehouse to reflect what's in your state system. So we do try our best to keep that consistent. So in case you want to find out what's in the Fed system, what's in the current ODS, you can come here, and I'm going to say I'm Connecticut. And this state basically tells you how to retrieve the data. So it gives you information about what date to use. I know some of the regions like to use really old dates so that they get all the historical data, but it does take longer to retrieve when you pick a date that's out there a little ways, but we'll still do that. And therefore, you can see the files you've requested. I have requested a Maryland one, and as it's processing, so you always know the status, it's processing. It's starting to pull the data for Connecticut. It is an ODS extract. That's another name for it. You can see what's in the file as it's processing. So it builds the water system table first, and then it'll go through each of these different tables. So you can see what's in ODS right at this moment back to 1999. is the date I put on the request. So once it is completed, you will have a zip file that you can download, and there still is an ODS utility tool that allows you to take that zip file and actually put it into an access system that makes it easier to look at the file and go through it that way if you don't feel like doing it on this site. But this site does allow you to go through and look at the stuff. And again, it does have all the same things as the reporting system. You can download it to a CSV, which will open in Excel. You can also download it to PDF or other types you want. And you can, with this one, you can look at different parts of the file. So maybe you're looking to check on a legal entity, you can look at that section. But again, you can download the zip file. Does anyone have any questions on file requests?
No questions posted.
Wow, I am running through these. So, oops, sorry. So again, you can see on every screen what you have access to. You can go back to My CDX to see the different roles you have. And if you want access, please let me know. The thing I have to do is add in the primacy agency that you would have access to. So if you are a regional person who has access to multiple regions, I can set that up. If you're a state who wants access to help out another state, I can give you access to multiple states. Things like that. Although I will wait for regional approver if you want to get a state that's not normally your state. Okay, I will go back to the slideshow. So we did the login. I did include in the slideshow the different roles and what you can see. And again, even with the node, you can see your files. They will end up in the system and you can see what's happening with your files. These are all the different roles for the regional. So they can also submit files. They can also request files. They're the ones who approve and reject files and submit for processing. Using this tool, we also do the regional actions, so they can submit violations and enforcement actions on federal ones. I do have the slides, so you can see how to do the different things I've just showed you directly, and the different file reports you can look at. I am planning on having SAIC give some training after the DMUC on how to read some of these FedRep reports and ODS extract reports. We're finding that now that they're easier to get to, a lot of the states are starting to use them and would like more information on how to read the files, how to actually make the fixes so that the data improvement happens, which is really nice. Again, this is a file request. Okay, so as I said, the ODS extract, there is a utility, and that is on our SharePoint, SDWIS SharePoint site under ODS, so you can get to that utility. So the data warehouse. This is the data we use for all kinds of data reporting. We take it from the ODS every quarter. So the next one coming up is going to be July 2nd. I'm trying to make that July 2nd date, so please make sure regions you get your files approved and processed, and states make sure you submit your files. We want to do it since we have the DMUC coming up that second week. We want to have all the processing done for the quarter. data is transformed from the ODS, not such that the data is ever changed. We do not change any of the state submitted data. Even if we know there's an error, we have to wait till the next quarter for the data to be resubmitted from the state to fix any errors. We will not make any changes unless it's our error, because we want the states to have, this is their data. We don't want to change any of your data. We do add in a few calculated fields. We do add in things like return to compliance date. So the date you have said this violation should be returned to compliance using an SOX or other approved enforcement code. We have a bunch of other kind of calculated fields to help us with data analysis. So things like a compliance status code, so we know if it's an open violation or if it's been returned to compliance, things like that. If you're ever interested in what kind of fields, calculated fields we do put in, you can see them on the reporting services, or you can always contact me. SDWIS Fed Data Warehouse is the source for other people using our data. So ECHO does pull or does get download of our data out of the SDWIS Fed Warehouse. ECHO does do some differences in how they present the data. They have, instead of doing return to compliance like we do, they have an addressed enforcement. So things like that, that's why you see some differences between ECHO and us, and they also have the ETT, which we do not have. But that's why the difference is. They do get it from us, but they do make some different calls on it. And EnviroFax, they pretty much just return the information that we have in our system. Okay. That's all I have. Does anyone have any questions on that information?
No questions posted as of yet, but I'll keep watching it.
Okay, thank you, Alex. That's all I have. I'll let you talk about the SDWIS Fed data tools and the upcoming webinar tomorrow.
Great. Thank you, Renee. Just wanted to provide a brief teaser of tomorrow's webinar. Renee are going to be doing a bit of a deeper dive into some of these topics, including the more publicly interfaced data from SDWIS, including some of the tools that are listed on the screen. We're going to be talking about the reporting services, the public version, which has many of the reports that you're familiar with seeing, and is from a public EPA Drupal site. So I'll be going over that and a few of those key reports and features of the reporting services for summary level stats for some of the more historic performance measures that we have, and we'll get into that. It's a more tabular way of looking at the data summarized by primacy or by region, and it also allows you to drill in and find even system level information for violations, inventory, and summary level data. So we'll go through that as well. I also wanted to dig in a little bit on the DW Maps. It's a drinking water mapping application to protect source waters that kind of serves as to be able to view some summary stats related to drinking water providers, potential sources of contamination and nearby dischargers, and a couple other key widgets that we've worked up in that tool. So I'll go into that and do a live demo of some of these other tools and get into more details and take questions on how to use them and what they're used for. So that'll be tomorrow. I believe it's at 1 from 1 to 2:30 time, and look forward to getting into the details of those with y'all then. So that's all I had to kind of set up tomorrow's webinar. So I'll probably throw it back to Trang here if you've got a couple more slides, Trang.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Alex.
Over to you.
Okay, I'll share my screen. Let's see. So continue. What you hear from Renee and Alex is kind of sections on the data warehouse. So for the entire data flow SDWIS is one thing that we know that we need to work together, whether we are from the federal side or from the state side, we are the same team to work to make sure that the data, the quality, and it's safe for drinking. So we need to kind of collaborate, work together to make sure that we can achieve that objective. So with the information we have here, it's very brief and a high level. We do have additional material to get to level of the training, understanding further how the data flow for the Fed reporting. We have the information describing how to get understanding the data error report, the validation report. So the link I posted here that connect to the SDWIS SharePoint site. If you have the account there, you click on this and you will be able to see additional slides to describe the detail or the instructions that how you can correct the error or how you can submit the data or understand further on the reporting process. We also have the link to the SDWIS version used. So in case you want to know that what kind of the reporting FedRAP that who currently using or how many people using a certain type of versions or later version of FedRAP reporting or later version of SDWIS state or who are the non-SDWIS state is shown on this link. So the SDWIS SharePoint site contains a lot more information than those 3 links. So you can discover a lot more on that. You can contact reporting SDWIS and you have questions, you have things you want to ask. Here are the contact information that you can go through. SDWIS regional coordinators is working with the primacy agency all the time for the data reporting. So the list of the contact from the regions, you can click here and it will link you to the SDWIS SharePoint site, lists out all 10 regional coordinators, the information for you contact, as well as to here at headquarters, here the information from us if you want to have a question. So that's very much that we have today, and hope you can get something out from this overview section. So final things, I'd like to see if there is any other questions.
The only question posted, Trang, was about when the slides will be available for download, and Anthony has responded that it's most likely Thursday that he'll have both the slides and a video capture of the webinar that's going to be posted to the SDWIS video library on asdwa.org.
Yeah. Thank you, Alex. All right. Any other questions that we have?
No other questions posted.
Okay. All right. Thanks again, Alex, and thank you everyone. This is thanks for the opportunity today for all of us to share with you some of the basic information on SDWIS. So hope to see you tomorrow.
Thanks
very
everyone.
much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony.